Hey guys, and welcome to the Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report, the first podcast to bring you the local fishing report, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. I'm Butch Theory, and I'm enjoying this beautiful day recording with my trusty co-host, as always, Captain Joseph Baya. How we doing, Joe?
Man, it was balmy this morning. I did not enjoy that. I've been enjoying this nice weather we've been having, and stepped out of the house this morning and said, "Who turned summer back on?" I mean, it was just
humid,
thick.
It's like walking around in a sweaty meat bag.
That's one way to put it. No
it's
doubt.
Terrible.
No doubt. But hey, I mean, it's cooled
gorgeous.
off. It's cooled off now, and here we are, Thanksgiving Eve, and
70 degrees.
Who thought we'd be talking about blue marlin
going off? Not just blue marlin.
Yeah.
Like 7 for 10 and 8 for 11, and
got a real cool report coming up a little later with the offshore report.
Giant tunas.
Yeah, we're going to talk about all that in the offshore report. Man, I know there's a lot of people in town this week visiting family and hoping to get out on the water. We got a really good inshore report coming from Patric Garmeson. He's been all over the place, and so he's going to point you in the right direction if you're here trying to get on some Thanksgiving speckled trout and redfish. And
sheephead, speaking of crazy things.
Yeah.
They've been smashing those still as well.
Yeah, sheephead's been good, and then we're going to finish it on up with old Matthew Isbell, the beach bum, talking about what you can do off the beach. Got a real cool Capt question coming up with him as well.
Like that one also.
Where are we going first, man?
Well, let's head on down to Captain Patric Garmeson and see what Mr. Ugly's been doing. What you say, Captain Patrick? What you been catching, buddy?
Man, top three species has been speckled trout, redfish, and sheephead. It's been a nice fall sheephead bite going on. When the trout bite gets a little slow, or like in the case of yesterday, I had some customers that really die hard wanting to catch some sheephead, so it worked out real well for me.
Well, get right into that. Talk about the sheephead first and foremost.
So over the last week or so, I've been pretty much staying on the causeway or launching from the causeway, fishing the lower part of the delta, fishing channel drop-offs and stuff, mostly for my trout, right on the edges of the flats. Popping corks have actually been effective because the water temperature bounced back up to the low and even into the mid-60s. So we're feeling that fall-like pattern where they'll respond to that popping cork pretty well. We've also been catching some redfish along the grass with what grass is left out there. And then the sheephead's been around the river mouths and stuff where there's some good structure, and that's been a live shrimp game, putting the bait down on the bottom. We found, the trout fishing has been kind of a mixed bag. You can catch some on like a free line shrimp in the deeper rivers or deeper areas like Dog River around between the marinas and Mobile River and Theodore Canal. Those have been some productive areas for like using a free line shrimp strategy. And then we've caught we've actually had some pretty good slick lure days late last week, and then didn't really have a whole lot of luck on it early this week, but just as soon as we get a little bit more cool weather, those slick lures will continue to produce well for us.
Patrick, this is going to be a pretty basic question, but it's something that I face a lot, and I still don't really have a good strategy. When you were talking earlier about the effectiveness of those popping corks, I'm just always struggle on how long to tie that leader on initially. Do you look at the water depth and make a decision based on the depth? Do you kind of go with one depth all the time and then switch it up? So what I mean by that is, like, let's say we're in 5 feet of water. Do you want to be fishing the top third, bottom third, middle? Does it matter? How do you approach choosing your leader length on your popping cork?
That's a good question, Joe. When if I was going to a brand new area, and this is where I kind of have an advantage over some people, like maybe somebody that's going fishing by themselves, I may have 2 or 3 customers with me, and I'll set leaders. Usually I'm going to go with a leader that's probably about right around 30 inches long. But if I am totally unsure as to what's going to be happening and where I'm at, I may vary anything from, say, about 20 inches worth of leader all the way to almost 4 feet worth of leader if I were fishing in areas that were maybe, say, 5 to 6 foot deep. But as far as on just a kind of a good judge, good rule of thumb, I like probably 30, 32 inches worth of leader is a good place to start. And then if you see if your hook's getting some trash on it, or your lure or whatever you have on your popping cork, if you're catching some of the bottom, then definitely shorten it up to maybe about 2 feet long and kind of play with that. But what I do is I'll usually stretch my leader out. Like when I'm cutting a new piece, I'll just stretch it out from my sternum out to my fingertips and then tie it off like that.
Yeah, and you're going to lose some. You're going to lose some eventually, cutting off a little bit here and there too.
Yeah, you're going to change some depth.
We'll go back and forth a couple times for sure.
And everybody's length, everybody's wingspan is going to be a little bit different. But if you have that as your consistency, it's a good place to start, and then you can vary it up from there. But man, that sometimes it does. It can change the bite. I mean, you could have a guy that's got a leader that's say 24 inches long or 22 inches long, and he's out catching the guy that's got a leader that's 30 inches long. And you wouldn't think that 6-8 inches worth of difference would make a difference on a bite, but it certainly can.
Patric, you talk about the popping cork, and whenever things are getting slower this time of year, when the fish are getting a little more lethargic, how often do you pop that cork? I would assume that you could pop it too much and too often. What's your sweet spot on that? Do you ever pay attention to that?
Yeah, I definitely do. I pop it, and I think around about an 8-second count between pops. And there again, I do get to have the luxury of having 2 or 3 or as many as 4 lines in the water if we're in a search mode. And I like to tell my guys, just kind of vary it up. And I'm watching everybody, seeing what they're doing. And usually the guy that's popping it a little less frequently is going to get the most bites. Not always the case, but most of the time that person that's popping it, say 8 to 10 seconds, is going to outcatch them. But sometimes I've had guys where I'm just about to tell them, hey, why don't you slow it down a little bit? And they start getting bit.
Smoked.
And,
yeah.
And that happens, it can happen. So varying it up as you're making a drift or as you're covering some water is going to certainly help you out and kind of figuring out. I mean, because it's no different than throwing a stick bait or a slick lure or a mirror lure. Find that cadence that they're looking for and stick to it. So popping corking often gets kind of, people kind of dumb it down and say, well, it's just a tourist rig or whatever. But I mean, it's a fish catching device for sure. And if you pay attention to it as closely as you would, say, throwing a topwater bait, and figure out what that cadence is on the pops, and it's going to put more fish in the boat for sure.
Well, you mentioned those slick lures. We talked last week as we had that big front move through. It really dropped water temperatures down, and we saw a definite change in the way the fish were reacting to artificial baits and the type of artificial bait. But now you're telling me that water temperature's creeping on back up, and it looks like for the rest of the Thanksgiving weekend, I mean, we got a little cool down, but nothing like we had. What are you seeing as far as the right bait, the best bait, and what do you think is going to happen this weekend?
So if bringing fish into the boat and maybe throwing some fish on ice is important for your trip, I would certainly have some live bait on the boat, and doing like a split shot rig or just a straight free line rig, trying some of that with some live shrimp. You're going to at least give yourself the option of being able to catch some sheephead and puppy drum and redfish if the trout aren't cooperating. But if you do, or if you're just hard-headed or you just love throwing artificial, the slick lures are going to work pretty good still, but you may want to play around with that little slick a little bit and do a lot more of your locating your fish with the popping corks. It's we went into this winter pattern because the water temperatures dropped below 60, and the fish started dropping down more onto the ledges and more bottoms of the channels, and a jig head with a jig on the bottom was good and effective. But now they're starting to kind of get more suspended. Water quality is good in a lot of places, so you have to kind of go through the tackle box, and it can be kind of fun, trying to figure out what they're going to bite that day. Throwing anything from top water to something that's slow sinking, suspending bait, to something that's all the way on the bottom, and it's really no telling exactly where they're going to show up. But there's a lot of variables when that water bumps back over 60 degrees.
Man, I found some really good clear water yesterday and a little bit deeper water, and I was throwing that beak at slick lure with a weighted owner. Absolutely wrecked them.
Butch, you were talking about that. What were you doing? Were you pitching it out and letting it sink a certain count? How are you working it?
Well, it was depending on the depth I was fishing. If it was super deep, I was kind of going to the bottom and kind of working it up almost, just kind of working the water column.
I like that approach. I like to throw it out if I'm not getting any bites or I'm in a new area. I'll throw it out, let it sink all the way to the bottom, and then work it back to me. And
the
a
way
lot
that
of times
thing works,
you'll find your bites are somewhere in the middle water column.
Yep. And the way that thing works, man, it covers so much dang ground.
Yeah.
I mean, it'll flip 3 feet this way and 3 feet that way if you know what I mean, if you twitch it just right.
Were you catching trout and reds?
Yeah. Yeah, mostly redfish yesterday, but yes, I've been catching some trout on it as well.
Very good. Patrick, do you still think this is a situation this weekend? A lot of folks coming into town, hanging out with their family, going to get out in the water and do a little fishing. I know I will here on Foul River, which, by the way, is still completely full of snakes. Y'all do not want to come down here, but
it's an outbreak.
Definitely.
I almost spit my beer out when I listened to last week's podcast.
It's really bad. It's really bad. I'm looking out here now, and it's –
could walk on them.
Yeah. Yeah. Just beware.
Good. That's a safety tip of the week, right?
Right. Do you still really, truly, do you feel like this is a situation this weekend where you want to go to your favorite spot and just enjoy where you like to fish in the fall, or is there anywhere that you think it's gonna be better than elsewhere?
Joe, I think every single day is so different. I mean, I've been on the water for over a week straight, and every single day the bite was different if I went to the same areas 2 days in a row. So, man, just pick your favorite spot. If it's Dog River, if it's Foul River, if it's Fish River, Magnolia, Bon Secure, Mobile River, Tinsall Raft. I mean, there's fish kind of all over the place. And yeah, you might get back and somebody say, oh, man, we smoked them here, smoked them there, whatever. But there's quite a few fish around. And if you find one, I mean, it's a very good chance you're going to be able to catch you a dozen or so fish. A lot of short fish are biting kind of all in the area right now. And we'll probably see those bigger fish anytime we get a cool down. But, man, there's so many fish out and around right now. We've got good water quality. There's just a lot of opportunities, so there's definitely not a reason to sit at the house.
Awesome.
That's a fact. All right, Patrick, we got to get the inshore tip from you, and this week's brought to us by Killer Doc. You know, Killer Doc's been educating us on the different forms of dock dysfunction that are out there, and
it's been helpful.
Yeah, it has been. Everybody's got a little different scenario,
Indeed.
You know. This week we're going to talk about another form of dock dysfunction known as skinny dock. Narrow finger piers, catwalks around boat slips.
Yep.
You've got one of those.
I can relate to that for sure.
Yeah, even bulkheads. You know, if you've got a skinny dock, you know it, and you're probably not very happy about it. But what can you do? Nothing until now. Killer Dock fish cleaning stations are offset and can enhance your skinny dock so that you can have the fish cleaning station you've always dreamed of. If you're suffering from skinny dock, check out the full line of all-natural dock-enhancing fish cleaning stations at killerdock.com. Patrick,
yes, sir.
What are you thinking for an inshore tip this week?
So my inshore tip, and this was a real bailout situation for me on 2 different trips in the last week, where I decided to go ahead and bring some live bait. I've been liking to kind of have some on the boat, and the trout bite, we wanted to put some fish on ice, and the keeper trout, we just didn't run across many of them. So we switched gears and got on some deeper structure and send some live shrimp down on some structure, and we were catching get on some nice sheephead. And if you find a single sheephead right now, there's a really good chance there's a dozen or 20 or 30 of them in the same area. And man, it's a really good eating fish. They fight hard, and they're a lot of fun to catch. So don't be hard-headed. If you want to take some fish home, throw some shrimp on the boat. The water quality is maybe not salty enough around the entire bay where you can pump raw water off the top, and the water's cool enough to where you can just get away with having some bubbles on them and keeping your shrimp nice and alive. So that's my tip is don't forget your bait shops this time of year. Go ahead and snag you 2 or 3 or 4 dozen shrimp and catch you some sheephead or maybe some redfish if that trout bite's not working out for you.
I like that, Patrick, and that's a good point about recirculating that water, that saltier water. I've noticed, growing up fishing on Fowl River my whole life.
It's a real problem.
Yeah, we'd go get our shrimp, and if we were putting them in a bait well that was taking in river water, they'd pretty much die almost immediately.
Yep, it's quick.
And one of the struggles with that is that, if you're filling up a 5-gallon bucket or one of these other, like I use the Engel live bait cooler. I really like that product. But if you're filling one of those up, you go to the bait shop and get your shrimp. I never really know how many shrimp that water can support. Do you have any kind of a rule of thumb for that? Like say a 5-gallon bucket filled up 4 gallons of water. Do you have any kind of a rule of thumb to say, that'll support 3 dozen shrimp or 5 dozen shrimp or something like that?
Joe, that question can range pretty wildly based on the size of your shrimp.
True.
But when it's cool like it is right now, I would say my rule of thumb, cool temperatures like we're in, the size of the shrimp that I've been seeing at the bait shop, I'd say you should be safe with, say, 4. I probably wouldn't go much more than about 5 dozen shrimp if I had 5 gallons or less water. The advantage that you mentioned, that Engel little bait box, that thing has that net in it. If you keep that net in there, it gives those shrimp something to cling on to, and it probably can give you a range to be able to throw another maybe dozen, maybe 6 or 7 dozen in there, because those shrimp like to hang on to things. And if there's nothing for them to hang on to, and you just have them in a 5-gallon bucket,
they're just flopping all
they're
around.
going to just stack on top of each other, and the shrimp that are on the bottom of the bucket are going to die pretty quick. So
Butch,
anyway,
that's a good use.
That bait box you're talking about would be advantageous to be able to keep a few more on the boat with you.
Yeah, I think that's a good use for that bait buddy.
Yeah, I've been trying that out some.
Yeah, I mean that's something I hadn't thought of. But if you're giving those shrimp something to cling to, you get a little better life out of them, and you don't have to dig around in there every time you want to get a shrimp too. But Patric,
that's right.
That's awesome, man. Here we are, end of November, going into December. My opinion, the best trout fishing of the year. What kind of availability do you have coming up?
So I think I have 2 days available next week, and then I've just kind of got stuff scattered all over the month, but a good bit of opportunities there. As soon as we start getting some cooler weather, we'll be doing some deep jigging. So anybody that's interested in trying to learn how to catch a trout on a jig in some deeper water, I'll be doing that. And we'll be mixing in with doing some slick lure fishing. So this is the time of the year if anybody's interested in honing their skills or kind of picking my brain and trying to get a better understanding of how to catch some of these fish on these soft plastics. This is probably the premier month to be able to go and learn how to do some of these things. So if anybody wants to get in touch with me, they can shoot me a text, 251-747-1554. If they're interested, I have a text message group that I send a weekly text message to, and we'll talk about fishing tactics that week and maybe some immediate openings and stuff like that. So if you're interested in that, let me know you're interested in hearing from my text message. And then also my website is uglyfishing.com, and you can click the book now button and check out my live calendar and book it right there on Fishing Chaos.
All right, buddy. Well, have yourself a happy Thanksgiving. If you're traveling, have safe travels, and we will be talking to you again soon.
All right, guys. Thanks for the opportunity, and happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thanks, Captain Patrick. Keep whacking, and we'll talk to you soon.
See you guys.
Man, that's some pretty good pearls of wisdom from the old Captain Ugly there. That's some good fall fishing winter tactics, Cap.
Yeah.
Pretty excited about that.
Got to make sure them.
Last year, my buddy and I were fishing over here at the mouth, and they were throwing popping corks, and I was like, they're popping them way too slow. They're never going to catch anything. And like the next day on the podcast last year, Bobby was like, you got to slow those way down. And I was like, yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah,
I told you that.
Right.
Where are we headed next, buddy?
Let's go on down to the Gulf Shores, Orange Beach, Fort Morgan, Crystal White Sands, and talk to the Bama Beach Bum, Matthew Isbell. What you say there, Matthew?
Hey, fellas. What's going on?
Not much, man.
We are here on Thanksgiving week and hopefully pointing some folks in the right direction for some little R&R. I know everybody needs it. What's been happening down there on the beach?
It's been a tough go, inconsistent. We've had some really good days, but we've had a lot of really bad days. And I'm going to point to another time of year that we kind of see these types of patterns, and it may kind of help everybody wrap their head around what to expect and kind of what to look for throughout the year. This year we had a really bad March, and so far I would say we've had a really bad November. And those 2 months can be very similar in the fact that they're very common for cold fronts. You know, in the spring we're trying to warm up, but then we get these cold fronts and it'll knock the temperatures down. This time of year we're trying to cool off. We're getting into winter. Of course, we get these cold fronts and it's bringing our temperatures down. And cold fronts are just the absolute worst thing for surf fishing. I mean, it really throws fish out of whack. And prior to this past week, we had 2 back-to-back severe cold fronts. Now, that really kicked up the sheepshead fishing, and we do have some onshore sheepshead opportunities. I fished the pier, which the pier has been pretty good for sheepshead, but you can fish the jetties and the passes. We've been catching them there as well. So sheepshead fishing has been really, really good. And I've noticed that incoming tide has kind of really been the hot spot. That's really when that bite's been picking up for the sheeps that I've noticed. But as far as fishing on the beach without structure around on the sand, it's been tough. It's been a little frustrating. And the most consistent bite that I've found has been whiting, which is typical, but they've been mainly small. And even that can be really hard when you're dealing with these high pressure systems and you're getting these cold fronts, just because there are fish to be caught, and that can be redfish, that can be black drum, that can be whiting, that can even be pompano in these cold fronts and in these times. But it's such a small window of time that those fish will actually bite. And it's such a small area geographically, like it's not widespread where you can go to any beach and catch fish. You've got to move around, and that's been the name of the game for me this past week. I've hit so many different beaches, and considering how many beaches we actually have in Alabama, you know, it's really, we don't have a ton of coastline, so there's not a whole lot of places to go that are public access that we can get to. So you're kind of limited on that, but I moved around enough to know that there were only a few spots holding fish here and there, and you really had to key in on trying to figure out what time of day those fish were feeding. And what was most successful for me in those times was, you know, trying to get it to warm up a little bit. That seemed to be that mid-morning, midday. That's when we'd find it. As far as location, I can't help you there. That was a that was a moving target every day of the week.
When you say you move around a lot and you've been moving around, do you mean within the same quote-unquote trip? Or are you saying just day to day?
Both, yeah. What I normally do any time of the year, but you know, when it gets tough like this, I have to do this more. I will go to a location that I know has been producing on a trip. So like if I've fished there leading up to it and we've been catching fish at this location, I'll say, hey, you know, don't fix what's not broken. So we'll continue to go there until I show up one day for a trip and it's dried up. And then I'm like, okay, we got to find new ground. So on that trip, you know, we'll make moves. We'll hit different beaches until we find a bite. Sometimes you can move on that same beach. You know, you can pack up your stuff, walk 100 yards or so or whatever, try to find another location, and that can be successful. We've done some of that, but we've had to make some pretty drastic moves this past week. That's been less effective, like just hitting different holes. It seemed like if they weren't on that stretch of beach, it just wasn't happening. So we had to just pick up and kind of move location altogether, try to find a completely different bar structure, completely different depth from the beach to find these fish. And it's both, you know, depending on what we see.
Matthew, it looks like some permit are being caught. Tell me about that.
Man, that's what's exciting. And I've noticed this last few years that when we get these colder temperatures, we get these opportunity more consistently, it seems like, a permit. And there was one day last week, I can't remember if it was Friday or Saturday, but me and David Thornton happened to be fishing the same day. And I didn't know he was fishing close to where I was, but we had caught 3 permit that morning on the trip that I was on. None of them were substantial. They weren't big. I mean, the ones we were catching were 11 and 12 inches, which it's always cool to see permit. I get excited regardless of their size. But David, he caught 3, and I think all his were 18 to 20 inches, so which are really, really
That's a big
awesome
permit.
fish, especially for this area. Like, we just don't normally get opportunities like that until this time of year. So I've seen them in December, the month of December. It seems like we get a higher number of them coming through. I've actually caught more permit the last few days than I have pompano. So that's unusual. That's not the norm. So it's pretty cool to see that opportunity. And there's nothing different that I can tell you to do. I mean, it's obviously not anything that we normally target. It's just a bycatch when we're out there pompano fishing. So however you would normally, fish for pompano with your fish bites, your fresh dead shrimp, sand fleas, those things will pick them up. But it's really cool to see.
Yeah, I think I maybe know one different way to target them. Butch, what was David's website again? Was he busy today? He couldn't give the report?
Peerpounder.com.
Yeah, that's what it is.
To go for the big ones?
Yeah, if you want to catch the big ones,
right.
Of course.
You're right.
You'll learn grasshopper.
Don't hook up with me. Go with David. He's got them dialed in. He knows how to get those.
I'm sure David would have something wise to say about you being a grasshopper or something.
Yeah, we can't all be a legend. I mean,
That's
he's
true.
legit. He's earned it. He's a legend. I call him that all the time. So that's a very rare area. We can't all be David Thornton.
Well, Matthew, guess what, buddy? You got the Hey Cap question this week. I really do like it. It's going to pertain more to what you can do for some of those bull reds. Butch, who's bringing us the Hey Cap question this week?
This week's Hey Cap question is brought to us by Foster Contracting. The recent thunderstorms that have been producing wind and hail in the area may have damaged your home's roof. The certified roofing pros at Foster Contracting offer free roof inspections, and if your roof has received damage, most homeowners will have little or no cost out of pocket when going through your insurance. If you're looking for quality construction with a dependable, licensed, and certified Fortified Roofing professional, give the Fortified Roofing pros a call at 251-973-9999. They're a family-owned business that's big enough to get the job done but small enough to care. Remember to support the local businesses that make your local podcast possible and check them out at fortifiedroofingpros.com. Brett Means asks, Hey Cap, I was curious about onshore fishing near the Fort Morgan Marina. I'll be there with family for Thanksgiving in a house and was curious if it would be worth it to fish on the surf or bayside, and if so, what I should bring and what bait or type of fishing is best. It's a multi-part question. So he's going to be here for Thanksgiving. He's in a house. He wants to know the bay or the Gulf side.
Basically what to do down around Fort Morgan. I mean,
Yeah.
I know the bull reds are out there in numbers. Are they within casting distance of the beach right now?
Well, we've picked up a couple in the past week, and the way that it works, bull red fishing right now is some of the best you can get on the Gulf Coast. I mean, and if you've seen some of these videos that people post from their boats at these schools, it's just incredible. Normally, and we can see them from the beach, like we can see the schools, not necessarily the fish, but we can see what's going on, because usually you can see those pelicans diving and you can see the water. It looks like it's boiling from the beach, and usually they're about 300-400 yards offshore, so they're outside of casting distance from the beach in most cases. Some days you will get lucky, and there's no way to predict this, but if you just happen to be in that magical location, whatever beach you're on, where they happen to swing in close, obviously, man, it's a really cool opportunity to get. I wouldn't bank on that though. What I do, I just have a piece of cut bait out there ready for them. We don't have a lot of stuff that's still on our baits right now, so you can just let it sit. And if they do swing in, you'll pick them up, because they'll eat whatever. They're not picky when they're schooling like this. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely an opportunity and something that you can do if you're fishing on the Gulf side. But I would say either or, to answer his question, what talking about going to the bay or going beachside, I would give both a shot right now, because you've got an opportunity at a lot of different species on the bay side, probably more limited Gulf side, but whatever's going to be your goal, if you want to catch whiting, if you want to catch something that you can put on the dinner table, they're probably going to be there, typically very close to the beach right now. But if you go to the bay side, white trout, which when I'm white trout fishing, cut bait works well, so you can usually catch some pinfish while you're back there. Use fish bites, use pieces of fresh dead shrimp, catch some pinfish, cut it up real small pieces, put it on a hook and put it right back out there, and you can usually pick up some white trout if you're just fishing from the shore on the bay right there. And even croakers, and sometimes this time of year you get some really, really nice sized croakers. If you're looking for something to eat, they taste just like redfish. A lot of people don't keep them because they don't know that they taste good, but that's a really good eating fish if you're looking for something to put on the dinner table. So really just depends on your goal. I wouldn't get hung up on catching big fish. I mean, obviously that's what everybody wants to do, and that's like what we think. But if you want to go fishing and have a good time, the fish are there on both sides. You just got to kind of rescale your thinking and not get hung up on catching the big one and lose focus of what your real opportunity is.
Matthew, down there around the ferry docks there at Fort Morgan, there's an old jetty, just a rock jetty out there. Have you ever fished down there? You find any fish down in that area at all?
I haven't been there in a while. What I do when I fish that whole area, typically, because it's a lot of ground to cover, because you can fish from there all around the point. You know, you can fish the bay side and Gulf side, you know, all kind of in one sweep. And generally when I'm fishing that area, I don't take everything with me, and I don't normally bottom fish. I'm usually throwing artificials, whether that be for trout or redfish. And I just haven't been over there personally, so I can't give you a good read on what's going on right now. But usually you got an opportunity to some trout and redfish with some swim baits or topwater lures. So if the conditions are right, if you get a good wind and the conditions are good to throw artificials, you know, that's something I would definitely take advantage of if I'm staying at that end of Fort Morgan. And, you know, it's not producing other things. You know, take you a simple swim bait, you know, 4 or 5 inches, and a topwater lure, and take a stroll around the point. It's a nice walk. You can see a lot of birds. You can see, you know, a lot of the fort. It's really neat. It's really cool. And you can get some exercise and also hopefully hang a few fish.
Yeah, I wouldn't discount those. There's a lot of structure right around there, too. And just about everybody we've talked to, Scott Kennedy last week, and
Patric
earlier is saying that basically they're finding sheep's head just about everywhere they normally find them in the springtime. Those docks and those jetties around there, I would consider gearing up for a sheep's head as well. You most likely will find one over there right now.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, any structured shoot, man. Yeah, I mean again personally, that area I haven't fished it a lot. I've spent a lot of time in Orange Beach, especially for the sheep's head, hitting those structures, and that bite it's been incredible. The sheep's head bite, you know, I've been able to make some pretty good videos catching a lot of fish the last couple of weeks with that bite, or last week or so since those last cold fronts came through. So yeah, if you've got access to structure, shoot, man, I would definitely put something on there for some sheep's head. And I know in the last couple of reports, you guys have given some really good advice on how to target those guys.
Well, Matthew, we certainly appreciate it. And Brett, same to you, man. Just email us at alabama@bestfishingreport.com. Give us your address, and we're going to be sending you a pack of those slick lures. Butch, you were talking about those slick lures, man. I stopped and picked some up on my way over here. Got to have those in this time of year. I don't know of a better big trout bait that's hit the market in any kind of recent memory. We've got that show we did with Joey where he talks about why he built that bait the way he did, and I highly recommend, if you're considering fishing them, go back and listen to how he created that bait, because it's an excellent piece of kit to keep if you're going after big trout. Thanks a lot, Brett, and thanks a lot, Matthew. We'll look forward to talking to you again soon, buddy. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving to you guys too.
Butch, we've talked about it since the middle of the summer, and we've been saying it that the fall is our favorite time to get out and fish blue water, and most people just don't do it. They got their mind on something else.
Fishing.
But it's going off out there right now. I mean, it is the best fishing of 2019. I don't think there's really any argument on that right now. And here we are sitting here Thanksgiving week. Who we got that's going to tell us what's going on this week?
Head on down to Captain Chris Hood. What'd you say, Captain Chris?
Hey guys, how's it going?
Oh man, we're kind of fired up about these offshore reports we've been getting. It seems like the past 3 weeks or a month, we've been getting some incredible numbers coming in.
Yeah, it's probably been as good as I can remember. Definitely been as good as it's been this year. I can't remember it being this good during the stretch, period of time.
I love to hear that. I know the marlin bite's been strong, but there's been a lot of big tunas around as well. Now, you've been out and y'all have caught some big tunas. I want you to tell us a little bit about that. But additionally, are you seeing any of those schoolie-sized fish around, or is it all big fish?
It's all been the big fish. I don't know. I really haven't heard anybody catching anything under about 80 pounds as far as the past month or so. But, that aspect of it is pretty typical for this time of year. The water starts to cool off. There's not as much pressure, and, it just gets better. The tunas show up, and they like that cooler water, more oxygen-rich. There's more bait, there's less pressure. So, but the blue marlin aspect of it is kind of unique this year.
I know you guys fished a ton this past weekend and week. Tell us a little bit about it. You guys live baiting? Whereabouts were you? Blue water everywhere. Just give us the rundown if you don't mind.
Yeah, we fished last Sunday, Monday. Came in for a day, and then went back out Wednesday, Thursday. But we were fishing anywhere from 100 miles to 130 miles, southwest of Orange Beach, and pretty water. I mean, it wasn't blue, but it was it was kind of blue green. It was definitely pretty enough to be what we want for the pelagic species. But live baiting mostly, did a little bit of trolling. Tuna's giving it up. Blue marlin giving it up too. But it was nice, and it was nice and cool. Nobody broke a sweat. I kind of wish tournaments would happen this time of year instead of
right?
summer, honestly.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about, finding rips, finding color changes, upwellings, downwellings, all these different,
altimetry.
Altimetry, chlorophyll, a lot of that. Is all that out the door right now? Y'all finding all these fish on floaters, or are you using some of that knowledge to help pinpoint?
Well, I always use, Hilton's to before I go fishing. But I'll be honest, the first trip, I was going to go to a certain rig that I had heard had been good, had been consistent, and I looked at the report, looked at altimetry, and it looked better a little further offshore, and I ended up overshooting the fish, come to find out. So, I'm not saying, and I'm still going to use those reports every time I go, but if it's been good for a couple of weeks at a certain spot, probably at least give that spot a try.
Well, we had Thomas on the show not too long ago, and Tom basically said, look, altimetry works, chlorophyll works, finding these different currents and things, that all that helps you, but you can kind of all throw it out if you've got a hot floater. I mean, they kind of create their own,
no question,
their own bite.
I knew that, and I learned that lesson, or it was, I guess it was further set in stone, or I was getting a little refresher on that lesson.
You broke the cardinal rule
on that first trip. Yeah.
You left fish to find fish.
Yep.
And he found them anyways.
That's actually because the rig that I went to on the first trip, there was plenty of tunas everywhere, and there was bait. It probably marked better than any rig I've been to all year, and just the blue marlins weren't really giving it up at that one. And then I come in to the rig I was originally going to go to, and those boats, one was 5 for 7 and the other one was like 7 for 12. And so
it's nasty.
Clearly I had
you got to go there. Yeah, you got to go there. So you guys ended up with 2 trips. What did you guys end up with on blues and tunas?
Tunas, we caught a couple on each trip, which was, plenty. We could have caught more, but we got what we needed. We're kind of
I like to
try
see
not to
I like to see that more captains are starting to take that approach, because it is a finite resource out there.
We talk about it all the time. Just take what you need. You don't need meat in your freezer for a year, getting freezer burn at the bottom of your freezer, man.
I'm not going to sit up here on a pedestal and say that I hadn't gone out there and smashed them. I definitely have, and taken more than what we needed. But I learned from that, because yeah, exactly. We sat there and the meat was in the freezer, and we didn't need that much. We just didn't need that much. We couldn't eat that stuff in the time it took to eat it and have it taste good and be fresh. It's just good to hear, Chris, that you guys are doing that and just taking what you need and saving some, because it all comes back around.
Well, and the fact of the matter is, I personally, in my lifetime, I've seen the tuna population basically go from prolific to
tough,
just about non-existent during the summertime.
Yeah, agreed.
Same. So you guys went what? You went 0 for 2 on blues the first trip, and then
0 for 2, and we probably broke off one of the biggest fish I've ever seen, blue marlin.
Dang, how big was he?
Probably a blessing in disguise, to be honest. And
how big do you think he was?
How big?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna really say
that big.
But It was jumping about the same distance away from the boat that 574 we killed in Destin earlier in the year was, and it made that 574 look like a peanut.
Yeah.
I'll put it that way.
Oh, well, that's tough, but
that's fishing.
That's fishing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, like I said, we would have been there a while with that fish.
Oh, yeah.
So, and it was on light leader. You know, we were light leader wanting to catch, be in the game for tunas and for blue marlin, but not blue marlin quite of that caliber.
Talk about that a little bit, Chris. So when you're out there and y'all are really you're not tournament fishing this time of year, even though I still think somebody needs to do it, but that's another story. When you're not tournament fishing this time of year, you are trying to catch more of what will bite. And so you're scaling down your leader. What do you like to go to when you're hoping to catch more tunas? And then what do you fish with when you're tournament fishing?
Well, when we're fun fishing and, wanting to catch tunas and marlin, we'll rig in the, 180 to 200 range, maybe go a little lighter to 150. When we're tournament fishing, we'll have some 220 out there, 280, 300, somewhere in there. It just kind of depends. We try to go as heavy as we can get away with tournament fishing, but sometimes we'd rather get the bite than not at all.
Sure.
So Chris, I spent a lot of time on the deck. I did not spend a lot of time at the helm.
On the what?
The floor of the boat, the downstairs. So
don't say cockpit.
You can't. Yeah, you can't hang out with this guy. He's
Sorry. Carry on.
Sophomoric behavior. So anyway, so one of the things was it was more like my job was always making sure tackle was in good shape, that we were fishing when we needed to be fishing. And I didn't get to spend as much time at the helm, paying attention to the electronics and learning what where we needed to be and that kind of thing. So break down for me when you're approaching a floater, really just any kind of that structure bite that's out in blue water. What do you like to do when you get to a rig to kind of survey the area and then pick a spot to start fishing?
Well, any given rig we pull up, I mean, you're going to read the water first off. You're going to kind of scan the surface. You're going to see, is there bait? Do you see any tunas crashing? What do you see up top? Do you see little tunas jumping? Do you see black fins crashing? Do you see yellow fins crashing? I mean, that's all important. It sounds simple, but that's obviously the first thing you do. And then, you take a lap around the rig and you watch your bottom machine. I'll watch it down to I'll turn it to about 600 feet and look at that top 600 foot. And, if I'm seeing a good show at that 600 feet, then obviously it's worth putting a little time into. So we'll try to catch some live baits or put the lures out at that point.
I haven't done a whole lot of live bait fishing, to be honest with you, Chris. It was kind of before my time, and I've told people that on here many times. Whenever you're live baiting, what is your ideal depth? Are you 20 feet? Are you 50 feet? Are you 100 feet for marlin?
Well, typically, more often than not, you've got two baits out, and you got them on the surface.
Okay.
You got them, however deep the bait wants to go down.
Sure, that makes sense.
So probably I would say no more than 20 feet down. Occasionally we'll put one on a downrigger, and that can be successful. It just, it all depends. But more often than not, we got two baits right off the riggers, 100 feet, 120 feet back, something like that.
So sure. kind of like kite fishing.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. That's kind of what I was comparing it to, or trying to compare it to, because I know a little bit more about kite fishing. What about the water temperature out there? Is it ideal? Is that why you think fishing's so hot right now? What are you seeing out there as far as water temperature goes?
Yeah, I mean, the water temperature, to me, as far as my understanding of it, is just about perfect. I mean, it's right there at 78 degrees right now, which is like that. That's for a blue marlin. That's their feeding time. They love 78 degrees. So, and then it's cooler for the tunas as well, and they like that as well. So they're more apt to be up towards the surface with that cooler water on top than than during the summer when it's 85 degrees. They're going to be down deeper. So,
well, Chris, man, it sounds like y'all had a good week, and man, I wish I had the ability to just jump in the boat and go when it's hot like this, because it's some of the best of the year. And I do want to get an offshore tip from you, and this week is brought to us by Hilton's Offshore Charts. You mentioned it, Chris, but with a service like Hilton's, the days of heading out and just kind of blindly looking for fish are pretty much over. And that's what's so awesome about that, is that you don't have to waste that time. That's the most precious commodity. Fuel. I mean, fuel's big, but I mean, it's really, if you got 48 hours of fish,
sure,
not wasting that time looking for fish is huge. And that's what Hilton's has. They have the most recent, highest resolution images that really help you, like I say, not only know where to go, but where not to go. That's the big deal. So, guys, make sure you choose the platform that professional captains all over the Gulf make and choose Hilton's Real-Time Navigator. They have a really easy-to-use interface, excellent customer service. More often than not, if you pick up the phone and call them, you're going to be speaking directly to Tom Hilton. And so you guys, if you're interested in that, check it out at hiltonsoffshore.com. All right, Chris, what do you think? Offshore tip, man. What'd you learn this week? We like to ask that question on here. What'd you learn out there?
Well, kind of lesson the hard way that I already knew. It's good to have a lot of weapons in your arsenal, so to speak. We hooked probably 120-pound yellowfin on a popper, which is going to be on a spinning rod, and we spent 3 hours fighting it, 3.5 hours fighting it, and we had that fish for, I would venture to guess, an hour of the fight. The fish was about a foot out of gaffing range, and ended up breaking it off. But had we had a harpoon, it would have been game over after an hour. So if you can have a harpoon rigged up, ready to go for those situations where you just can't quite seal the deal with a standard gaff, then a harpoon is definitely the way to go.
I 100% agree with you. I am what we call a sharpshooter with a harpoon.
And so humble.
I am humble, but I'm quite incredible with a harpoon. But it's not IGFA, right?
You sound very humble indeed.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But they're not IGFA, right? You can't use them in a tournament. That's the only predicament with that.
Actually, one tournament you can, the Biloxi tournament.
Okay.
Mississippi Gulf Coast Billfish Classic or whatever.
But definitely something to be aware of if you're going to put a harpoon in your arsenal is check the rules if you're fishing any kind of tournaments or anything like that.
Yeah, and if it's a state record,
that's right.
That will DQ a state record.
Yep, agree, man. That's a great tip. I agree with you. I love the harpoons. Probably my favorite thing in the world.
Yep, they're definitely fun to play with too.
Well, Chris, thanks a lot, man. I hope you have a good Thanksgiving, buddy. We appreciate you sharing your knowledge and sharing your report with us on here. We always enjoy having you on, and just stay safe out there, man. That's the biggest thing, and come home and enjoy hearing those reports from you again.
All right, guys. Thank y'all, and happy Thanksgiving to y'all, too.
Awesome. Thanks, Captain Chris. Talk soon.
Thank y'all.
Great show this week, man.
Good stuff, man. That blue water stuff fires me up. I wish we could get out there.
I know it. It's tough. I'm starting to think maybe just start booking a trip in November and just hope for the best weather-wise. It's not going to hurt anything.
No, it's not.
If you get to go, it's pretty much always going really good out there in November. And
as long as you can get out.
If you can't get out, what have you lost?
Nothing.
You go hunting.
Yeah, not a whole lot. Push it back until you can go.
Yeah. Well, what'd you learn, man?
Man, I really like Captain Patric's live shrimp tip about a couple of different things, actually. About the shrimp clinging to the net in that Ingalls cooler. They can kind of have a home base, so to speak, and not be a lot goes on in there, I would think. I mean, a lot of tussling and water circulation. And
I think, that was kind of a light bulb moment for me, because if you think about what a shrimp's doing when he's in his natural environment, he's clinging onto the bottom, crawling around on pylons, all that kind of stuff. He's not sitting there fighting the current, quote unquote. You put them in a live well, they got nothing to hold on to.
The water's
it's like being in the most current-rich environment there is, and they're having to just basically get swirled around.
Water-nado.
And yeah, I don't even know what that is, but
now you do.
Yeah, so you just think about they're down there on the bottom, they're getting bumped into each other, and we know that from dealing with sardines and cigar minnows. If those fish are you take a batch of cigar minnows or a batch of sardines and you throw a hardtail in them, it's going to be death.
They're all beat up.
Yeah, they're all beat up.
Yeah.
So, give them something to cling on to was really a light bulb moment for me. Just put a little something down in there.
Yeah. And recirculating the live well, too.
Yeah, that's a big deal this time of year, for sure.
Your water's not 110 degrees. So
you can't overload your live well, and
obviously.
And if you're fishing all day, you need to be prepared somehow to probably change out the water potentially that you're recirculating. But that was some really I love those tips
and
that
the salt
are
content.
I love those tips that are
it's important too.
Super practical. That's an every trip kind of tip.
That's what you learn being on the water 200 days a year. You know what I mean? And his same live bait tip about putting all the net or putting the bait straight out of the cast net, over outside of the boat. In your net. That was
that way you didn't have to touch them.
Live bait guru.
Yeah.
What about you, man? Take anything away from today?
Yeah, what I took away is that harpoon is absolutely a vital tool if you're not tournament fishing. You don't really, you're not trying to set records or whatever. We've definitely seen that between swordfish and tuna.
Huge.
It's a huge deal. I mean, there's been plenty of fish that are just like what Chris described, that we probably wouldn't have caught those fish.
Agreed.
And we've all had that frustrating moment where,
especially with a tuna, they do the circles.
Yeah.
They get within 30 feet.
They
and
do
then
the
15
death
feet,
circle.
And then 10 feet. And then they go to 30 feet again. Yeah,
and
it's
the
tough.
captain's yelling at you the whole time.
Why did you gaff him?
If y'all haven't gotten, the sense yet, like I have a lot of deep-seated fear of captains yelling at me. So
A lot of yelling.
I would like to minimize that in my life at
Agreed.
this point. But it reminds me of one thing you don't want to do when you have a harpoon.
What's that?
First time I ever used a harpoon, I was on your brother's boat, and he had just gotten this brand new harpoon. He's told me, "Hey man, we're gonna start harpooning fish," and I was like, "Sounds awesome!" Like,
Let's do it.
You just see see myself like on the pulpit.
Right.
Like didn't quite work out like that, and I was itching so bad to use this thing. I was like, I just want to see how it works, So we were catching amberjack, and I was like, I'm gonna harpoon one of these amberjack. And amberjack comes up, and
I assume this is before you go tuna fishing.
Yes.
Usually we hit the amberjack before we go.
Yes,
okay, go ahead.
yes. So, I'm like, I just itching to use it real
Sure.
bad. So I harpoon this amberjack. Everything goes as planned, and I take the harpoon out of the amberjack, and I'm getting the amberjack all squared away, put him in the box, and I set the harpoon down on the fish box with the end of it kind of resting up against the gunnel, and we hit a wave, and that wave kicked that harpoon up, and it shot straight out of the scupper hole.
Wasn't tied to the boat.
No, sir.
She gone.
Dang. $350
Out of your pocket.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Skip rate paying for that.
No, it was not a good day, and I did not get to harpoon anything else that trip.
And you definitely didn't get to harpoon a tuna because you lost it on the amberjack.
Right. So, number one rule of harpoon is once you harpoon something, put it back in the rod holder,
Or just keep it tied off.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in that scenario, normally you got it tied off to your wrist or
Sure.
whatever, but yeah. So that was what I learned. I learned that a long time ago.
Yeah. Harpoon's a cool thing, man. I know a couple of those trips we've been on, go, harpoon 8 or 9 tuna in a row.
I remember when you harpooned one specifically, we were fighting. It was one of those deals. It was like a 60-pound leader. We couldn't put any pressure on the fish, and we fought that fish, and he was doing the circle deals, probably at 90 or 100-pound tuna.
So stressful.
And he popped off right at the boat, and you threw the harpoon at him and hit him, and we got that fish, and we would have never got it if we wouldn't have had that harpoon.
That's right. And, yeah, I mean, those split-second decisions could be the difference in a fish or not a fish.
Yep.
It's fun, man.
Absolutely.
All right, dude, bring us out of this thing, man.
Well, I got to ask you, are you gonna fish Saturday? Or are you going to be watching the game?
First of all, Joe, I want to tell everybody happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I'm really thankful for our listeners. I'm thankful for this podcast. I'm really thankful for our contributors that bring us the show each week. I just can't say that enough. For our sponsors, man, that bring us the show for free each week.
Yeah.
It's incredible. I'm really thankful this year. We've had an awesome year. I'm thankful for you, man. Thankful for you, my partner.
I'm thankful for you too,
That's a
buddy.
good time,
and
brother.
you know what? I look forward to this every week.
Me too.
It's something that is the highlight of my week, and we could not do it without folks listening. We could not do it without the sponsors making it where we can produce this thing on a quality professional level, and we couldn't do it without those captains and guides giving us their knowledge that they've earned through hundreds and hundreds of days on the water.
Blood, sweat, and tears.
And just being willing to share and
sum it up for you guys, basically.
It's an awesome thing, and we should all be really thankful for what we've got. This country is very #blessed. It is.
Sure.
We have more than we
Spoiled
need.
rotten.
We have more than we need, and I hope you guys have a great Thanksgiving and can just be comfortable in the week and just be thankful for what you got, because we've all got more than we need, no doubt.
No doubt, bro. And Saturday, I'll probably be fishing tomorrow, having the family over. Going to smoke a turkey on the green egg. And I'll be watching football, man, on Saturday. So it's rivalry week.
Well, folks, as always, we appreciate your reviews. I know Butch scolded y'all a little bit last week, and we saw some uptick in the reviews. We really appreciate that. We love hearing from you more than anything, that that you're enjoying it. And we welcome any kind of review that you can give us over on iTunes. It really helps the show. If you want us to send you the show, of course, just go over to greatdaysoutdoors.com/ASFR and put your email in. We'll send you the show each week. And Butch, War Eagle.
Roll Tide. This week's Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report has been brought to you by Geico. Call Ron Davis, Geico agent, at 251-445-0053 or visit him online at geico.com/mobile-al.
Also brought to you by Coastal Conservation Association of Alabama. Check them out at ccaalabama.org.
And also brought to you by Daycool Heating and Air, your home performance specialist. Contact them at 251-260-3858 or check them out online at www.daycoolair.com. License number AL07028.
This week's Saltwater Fishing Report is brought to you by Angelo DiPaola, the Coastal Connection with eXp Realty, your boating and beach property specialist. Check me out on Facebook at Angelo DiPaola Realtor, the Coastal Connection, or call me direct at 850-287-3440.
Also brought to you by
Hilton's Real-Time Navigator, bringing you the highest quality online satellite fishing charts since 2004. Your source for sea temps, altimetry, currents, and watercolor at hiltonsoffshore.com.
This week's Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report has been brought to you by Fish Bites. Check out their full line of freshwater, saltwater, tackle, and apparel at fishbites.com.